We are here tonight for our last Passion and Purpose event of this season. Hi, I'm Linda Levy. You're at C3. I'm so thrilled you're here. You're going to be amazed. One Cancer Patient is a photographic series that chronicles Tracy Asher's 7-year journey with metastatic breast cancer. Personal and intimate images work together to ease fears of the unknown, often experienced during the initial cancer diagnosis. With strength, beauty, and humor, the struggles of surgeries, hair loss, treatments, and everyday life are presented through raw imagery. Every step on a cancer journey can be scary, but as it's traveled, a calming wisdom is achievable. The wisdom in One Cancer Patient supports women currently fighting cancer, as well as thrivers navigating life after treatment. When we see ourselves represented in art, even amid our deepest battles, we find unity and courage. Even though every individual diagnosis creates its own story, we are each one cancer patient. Tracy Asher is a Gen Xer from the suburbs of Chicago. After graduating from film school, she moved to Los Angeles, where she works as a costumer on TV comedies like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Apple TV's Mythic Quest. Warren Perlstein has been a professional photographer in Chicago for over 50 years and has been Tracy Asher's father for 46 years. This is Tracy and Warren's story about how a sudden and seemingly terrible moment can become a passion project with a healing purpose.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Tracy Asher, and this is my dad, Warren Perlstein. I'm going to start. Well, first, thank you to C3, and thank you for that great introduction. I'm going to start out with a very brief history of my cancer so we can sort of get it out of the way and so that everybody has an idea of what they'll be looking at in the photos while you see them throughout the presentation. So let's start. Here we go. I was first diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer on July 31st, 2014, at the age of 39. My dad took this picture the night before my mastectomy. 3 years after this, I was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, which appeared in the vertebrae of my neck. 2 years later, after complaining of headaches and dizziness, I went to the ER and was diagnosed with my third tumor. A brain CT scan and testing revealed stage 4 metastatic breast cancer on the left side of my cerebellum. Receiving every diagnosis was shocking and heartbreaking. Looking toward the future seemed a monumental task. I have survived many surgeries: a double mastectomy, hysterectomy, breast reconstruction, spinal surgery, and then brain surgery. Twice, I've had a portacath surgically placed for chemotherapy and immunotherapy treatments. 3 times, I've been subjected to radiation. Becoming the subject of a photographic series about breast cancer has been one of the most meaningful decisions I've ever made. My images are meant to alleviate fear of the unknown for anyone facing their own cancer battle. My personal and intimate moments reveal that strength, beauty, and humor are still possible even during surgeries, hair loss, and chemo treatments. When I was first diagnosed with breast cancer, I grieved for the body I was going to lose. I planned to be aggressive with treatment, and I prepared to document my journey. Initially, it was to remember what I looked like before, so that I could compare it to my new self when I was finished. Then I remembered something my dad always said about important milestones. He said, "Remember everything. This might make a great movie one day. Whether it's a happy memory or maybe not, it can still be an important one." And with this quote in mind, it made sense for me to hire a photographer and document my journey. Based on a recommendation, I interviewed and then hired Georgina Cates Photography. Georgina told me of her own experience with breast cancer. And since I was really nervous modeling naked, I wanted to find a female photographer who would know how to make our photo shoots comfortable and fun. Dad?
Hello, everybody. Well, during my 50-year career in photography, I've shot many harrowing things that should have prepared me for just about anything. I always preferred commercial photography because I learned early on that photojournalism forced you to be comfortable shooting in situations where people are hurt or in distress, and I had a hard time with that. My career began shooting weddings. It was while shooting a wedding that I learned the valuable lessons which would follow me forever and shape my daughter's journey with cancer. At a wedding, we were photographing the bride outside under a tree. There was a robin, which most likely had been eating red berries, and decided this was time to poop on the bride's veil and dress. The bride was screaming and crying. They immediately got the dress off of her, and surprisingly, the local dry cleaner was an actual guest. So he grabbed everything and ran. He had everything cleaned and was back within 1 hour. When all was calm and everyone was able to laugh at the situation, they asked, "Did you get the picture?" I didn't. It wasn't a problem, but it was a bummer. I was pretty upset with myself, and I felt like I had let the couple down. This distressing moment was going to be one of their favorite stories to tell. This is why it's important to just get the shot, no matter what it is. You may never use it, but nobody knows when a moment might become an important memory. Tracy and I talked about photo documenting her journey. She had hired a professional photographer who would take care of any really personal or nude shots. I would never do anything like that. I wouldn't shoot. But she worried about missing important moments in the hospital while she's out of it from anesthesia and pain medication. So she asked if I could do that part. I thought I was prepared to photograph anything, but in a hospital dealing with my daughter's cancer, I would have to try. I got to Los Angeles the day before her first surgery. I was full of anxiety. There wasn't anything I could really do in the hospital except be some kind of emotional support and to try to get some decent photos with my little Fuji X30 fixed lens camera. The next day, I returned to travel to Tracy's hospital room. That's when things became clear, and I understood why she wanted me to take photos. Even though she was in post-surgery pain, I saw a beauty in her and Jim, her husband, and all the medical support they had. I saw lighting, color, design, hope, happiness, and love, and that created photo ops for me. It certainly wasn't easy at times. Don't get me wrong, it was hard. I was embarrassed to be moving around trying to get good angles while my daughter was lying in a hospital bed. I kept taking photos, Tracy with her doctors and nurses. These were happy moments I was hoping for.
So as I went through chemotherapy, hair loss, radiation, and reconstruction, it was easy for me and Georgina to keep shooting almost every day because she lived really close and I was getting more comfortable modeling for her. She started showing doctors our photos. They were all impressed and described the pictures as a new and important way to explain a journey with cancer. We were encouraged to continue our work and develop it into a book. Georgina, the artist, wanted tears and deep emotions. I, the pragmatist, was past grieving. I kept arguing, who is this book for? Why are we making a book about how depressing cancer is? Why do we want to make people cry when they're in a fight for their lives? I wanted the viewer to have their own emotions. For me, it was fear of the unknown that was more debilitating than the fear of dying. I only had to convince myself once that I wasn't going to die. And then it was all the unknowns I had to deal with. Every step was something new to research and worry about, and that felt totally unfair. I wished there was something that could help me understand exactly what to expect. And I finally came to the conclusion that I could create something that would expose breast cancer to anyone who wants to see what it looks like. And they could do it at their own pace and from the comfort of their own home.
At this point, Tracy asked me for business advice. We spoke about model releases, partnerships, and corporations versus LLCs. Tracy and Georgina decided to copyright their work with both of their names, which gave both parties equal right to use the photos as long as there was no profit from it. Tracy was introduced to a copyright attorney who would write a contract if needed. At the same time, Georgina proudly emailed me a group of her photos. They were beautifully produced, but not really journalistic.
Then in 2016, about 2 years later, I was working with Georgina almost every day, but all she wanted to do was keep shooting instead of focusing on the book. I was getting annoyed because we kept recreating moments, and that felt totally disingenuous to me. So in early 2017, our differences and arguments got to be too much. Georgina and I had one more massive disagreement, and the book was over. I did get a hard drive from her, which was completely disorganized. And by the time I was able to go through it, I discovered that she hadn't even given me everything. But it was too late because she had moved to Europe. I was really angry. And then I learned that she pretty much shot everything in black and white. Very few photos were actually shot in color, and none of them were better than a JPEG. I was totally at the mercy of the hard drive and my own selfies and whatever my dad had taken. I saw no way to continue with the project and convinced myself it wasn't an important story to tell anyways. Why would anyone want to see me go through something that thousands of women go through?
When Tracy told me Georgina was out, I wasn't sure whether or not she could move forward with anything. We discussed ideas of what to do, or should we just give up? We wanted to verify copyright law, so Tracy conferred with the same attorney who once again set her mind at ease. Tracy and I were still working regular jobs at that time. So we were too busy to consider doing our own thing, and just like that, the book was over. During her next break from work, Tracy came to Chicago to have a good time and forget about all the stress. But she kept complaining about a sore neck. And she felt it was from sleeping on the sofa bed. Although this put a damper on our fun, searching for a new and improved pillow she could use gave us something else to focus on.
After returning to Los Angeles, the pain in my neck got worse. And eventually it spread down my right arm. And it was finally too much to take. So my oncologist ordered an MRI. Before my husband and I could even get home from the MRI facility, I got a phone call that he wanted to see me in his office in a few hours. My breast cancer had metastasized into the vertebrae of my neck. My husband and I walked directly from the doctor's office straight to the hospital and started calling family and friends. I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks and had a lot of visitors. The surgery went well, but I woke up in a neck brace and with a very sore throat. With a new diagnosis, a new book seemed more important and gave me purpose again. This was something I could use to tell a story of then versus now, not just a story of how one photographer saw my breast cancer journey. Now it's a project about how a cancer patient can use their previous knowledge as a foundation for new experiences with a little less fear of the unknown. But I needed a new photographer who lived closer to me than my dad. So I hired a friend who was starting a new business, Stacy Kane Photography. And I asked if she would be willing to shoot raw photos for me. I had seen some of her work and I liked that her subjects always looked engaged and happy. Because I wore a neck brace all day, every day for 7 months, my dad visited often and we started taking photographs of me more seriously. A backup plan, maybe a collection. We weren't really sure, but it was a great distraction. It was also the fire I needed to wake up every day with something purposeful to do instead of giving into depression.
Tracy was in the hospital for so long that her mother, sister, me, and friends were able to visit. Like before, and without having to be asked, I just kept taking pictures. But this time I took a little different approach. I shot more creative, sensitive, and even fun pictures to keep everyone in a positive setting. I wish I had a better camera, but maybe with different lenses, wide angle, telephoto, but I was determined to make my little Fuji with the attached zoom lens work. My idea was to shoot a lot. Georgina was long gone, and although the new photographer Tracy hired was a friend, we didn't know much about her style. So to be safe and to keep myself distracted instead of worried, I kept shooting. Unfortunately, I couldn't be in LA forever, so I headed back to Chicago and left Stacy as the on-call photographer. She and Jim would have to photo document Tracy's treatments, which will add different vibes, but hopefully complement what Georgina and I had already done. Back home, I began to realize that I couldn't work and I couldn't worry about Tracy all at the same time. so I decided to retire, sell my photography business. I wanted to see a book published for Tracy no matter what. I just hoped we would have enough photos to work with. I started processing everybody's photos going all the way back to the beginning. Because of all the Photoshop tools available to me, I could make images better. I do believe processing is a big part of a really great photo. I wanted these photos to be different, expressive, artistic, not just snapshots. We only had JPEGs from Georgina that I had to make high res, whereas Stacy was giving me the raw files and put her faith in my skill to make them look good. The dimensions of the photos were all over the place, so I added borders to help create uniformity, but I was also thinking about photo continuity. Black and white, color, add special effects. Are these for art or just documentation? I really didn't know what I would do or how many times I would redo them until I started processing all the images. Emotionally, it was painful to see my daughter's body changing. But the upside was I felt myself getting more desensitized to what I had to work with.
So now we're into the year 2018 and another cancer diagnosis later. And I'm finally comfortable with the idea of developing a newer and better book. I started to scan paperwork, organize diary entries, write the narrative and the educational parts of the book. And Stacy and I discussed what kind of photo we wanted to end the book with. A year later, in September of 2019, my dad took some time to come visit me in Los Angeles. We wanted to celebrate that I was 2 years cancer-free, and the book was at a point that I needed his expertise as a professional photographer to go any further. Our mission was to visit every bookstore we could find and search for anything similar to what one cancer patient was becoming. Although I tried to keep it a secret, the entire time he was visiting, I was suffering from stinging headaches. Eventually, I admitted my pain to my dad and Jim, my husband, and they finally convinced me to call my oncologist and ask for advice. And his advice was, go to the emergency room.
After spending 6 hours in the ER, Tracy finally got a CT scan. It never crossed my mind to photograph anything. It was just too horrible. I just couldn't do it. No matter who the patient was, let alone my daughter again.
So the breast cancer had metastasized this time in my brain. I was going to have brain surgery, and that just sounded insane. And I needed something to look forward to. So I kept silently repeating to myself, make sure dad's taking pictures, make sure dad's taking pictures, because this book is going to be crazy. As I was being rolled away for brain surgery, I continued the mantra in my head. Make sure dad's taking pictures, make sure dad's taking pictures, over and over until the anesthesia finally knocked me out. But it worked, because according to my dad, as I was being rolled into the ICU after surgery, I raised my hand into the air and gave him the take pictures signal with my finger. Stacy was taking a break from photography while pregnant. So once I left the hospital, my dad and I started gathering together photos and choosing the ones we needed to tell a story of one cancer patient with 3 cancer diagnoses. The way to move forward would be to embrace the idea of a collection of images by multiple photographers, family, friends, and selfies. The question was, are we desensitized enough to work on this together? I knew my dad wanted to stay and help me with day-to-day tasks after brain surgery, but because the tumor caught us off guard, he'd have to go home first and then come back. While he was back in Chicago, through his connection at the Donk House, he secured the promise of a 1 cancer patient exhibit at the beginning of May 2020. Now we have to figure out how to tell a huge story with a limited number of images and without including any of the text that would be in the book. So naming and organizing the photos became incredibly important. It would be the only and easiest way for guests to follow such a huge story. My dad and I worked on 1 cancer patient every morning when we were together and also when we were 1,000 miles apart.
When Tracy gave me the take photos signal after her brain surgery, I had no choice but to shoot, even if the doctors and the nurses thought I was crazy. I knew she would need my photos. This is the story of how we secured the Donk House exhibit. I had been a volunteer photographer here at the Donk House for a couple of years, and I was friends with Laura Engel. She was in charge of the Sharpenberg Gallery. I had exhibited my photography with her before, and I trusted her opinion. I approached her about the possibility of hosting the 1 cancer patient photo exhibit. I thought it would be a cool way to get exposure for Tracy's book. Laura was excited to give us a May 2020 date, and soon she introduced us to Rosa Gallagher, who we continued to work with. As we planned for the exhibit, I thought of something Tracy had written. While we may share a diagnosis and be united against this disease, ultimately we are each 1 cancer patient. So I introduced the idea of opening the exhibit up to other women whose own cancer journey played a positive role in their art. We discussed it and agreed I should call friends, artists, studios, galleries until we found our artists. Jane Mikulski, Caitlin, Nancy Peary, and Sarah Pete Convery. Even though Tracy was in the middle of her chemo during her 45th birthday, I was excited to visit, celebrate, and take a lot more photos. I kept thinking about buying a new camera. I knew I'd be shooting more, and I wanted to update to something lighter weight. I had a new purpose, which was the most important assignment of my life. It felt like coming out of retirement. Beyond the great doctors and nurses, I was working on the book and now the exhibit that helped the healing process. Working with Tracy and her husband sparked a passion in all of us that became a welcome distraction from scary health concerns. We made time to go out shooting whenever Tracy felt strong enough, or we decided to be more relaxed and set up shots in the comfort of her home. The Donk House exhibit was quickly approaching, and there was still a lot to do. I went back home and then came back to LA again. When I wasn't driving Tracy back and forth to work, we spent our days discussing photography, going through images, and making selections. We decided what would go into the book, the exhibit, both or neither. Most of all, we were enjoying life, and I bought a brand new camera, a mirrorless camera. It's nice. Since I had excuse me. Since I had exhibition and curating experience, and because the Donk House was in Chicago, I spearheaded the show by designing marketing materials and planning logistics with the 4 other artists and Rosa.
Okay, so now we're into March 2020, and we all know what happened. COVID quarantine began. I was laid off from work. The exhibit was canceled, and my dad had to get home before everything shut down. It felt like the world stopped moving. I was happy to have this extra time to confirm my photographic chronological timeline. And I now had more time to write and rewrite and share my writing with cancer thrivers and writers and doctors to get their input, questions, and concerns. I took an online book publishing classes. I took a couple of them through the Los Angeles Center of Photography. And I did all this while continuing with chemo.
During the COVID quarantine, calls between me and Tracy were daily and sometimes multiple times a day. I was putting in hours of processing and printing and then reprocessing and reprinting. I was forced to work with what we had, and they needed to be perfect. There were a lot of cell phone pictures. It was great to have them as options, but just because we all have cell phones with cameras doesn't mean everyone knows how to use them. Many of those pictures were too low res, out of focus, or badly composed. The exhibit might have been paused, but I never acted like it was over. Another person who I love and always worried about was Tracy's husband, Jim. While caring for my daughter alone during quarantine, I knew he had his own artistic outlets, like writing music and painting. I saw his new paintings, and as he posted them on social media, I had another creative light bulb going on. I wanted to collaborate. My photography superimposed onto his paintings added another layer to our exhibit, and now gave Jim something purposeful to distract him and something to look forward to. It illustrates how a passion project, not unlike a disease, can be contagious.
So this past January 2021, we hit some milestones. It had been almost a year since the quarantine began, and it was just over 1 year that I'd been in remission. And the Donk House exhibit was rescheduled for April 30th, 2021. And one cancer patient was afforded the opportunity to also be seen online as a virtual gallery. So we were now planning a hybrid event. Keeping it all organized was not easy, while also struggling with the PTSD of cancer. Marketing and advertising for a book and a hybrid exhibit had to be tailored to publishers, organizations, and social media, making sure the same story would be told among 3 separate platforms, each with a different amount of available space. It felt like putting together a 5,000 piece puzzle.
Well, I'm getting older, finding it harder to do photography. F-stops, shutter speeds, ISOs, and focusing especially, all becomes a little harder to manage on the new cameras. And Photoshop, well, as most of you know, it just keeps upgrading, making it a nightmare. Even with these hurdles, photography for one cancer patient has never stopped being my passion. It has been the glue that will bind Tracy and me forever. And it kept me from going, excuse me, but batshit crazy during quarantine.
The April 30th Donk House opening reception and the virtual opening the next day were both very successful. So what's next? Personally, I've decided to try mentoring other cancer patients. Physically, I need to get some stamina back and stay vigilant with my health. And professionally, I need to get back to my career as a costumer on TV shows so that I don't lose my health insurance. But I can't let up on one cancer patient either. There's still so much to do, like writing grants, budgets, and sponsorship inquiries, and reaching out to book designers, editors, and publishers.
Tracy had the idea to hang our show in a similar way to Annie Leibovitz. She'd seen an exhibit that was hanging in LA. It looked cool. I worried about this plan though, but thankfully the prints didn't curl and the twine that held it up didn't fall from the weight of the prints and binder clips. The timeline was easy to follow and people found symbolism in the crookedness of the prints, like life hanging by a thread.
Now, I would like to show a video to everybody as take a deep breath and hope it works. And then we'll come back and then sort of wrap it up and then I think take questions.
Here I thought my life was gonna change, and here I prayed to a God that masked his face. The sense that I should have a chance to get it right. Could I be brilliant or a reflection of the light in your eyes? Looking up at constellations, we map our path through time. Booking rooms through reservations, but only in my mind. You're my Valentine, silly Valentine, but only in my mind. You're all mine, my Valentine, but only in my mind. And here I swore my life was gonna change. An empty prayer, 'cause everything's the same. The sense that I should have a chance to get it right. Could I be brilliant or a reflection of the light in your eyes? Looking up at constellations, we map our paths through time. Booking rooms through reservations, but only in my mind. You're my Valentine, silly Valentine, but only in my mind. You're all mine, my Valentine, but only in my mind.
I did it! It worked! Awesome! Okay, we got it. We got through the whole thing. You know, throughout my experience in the art world so far, I've learned not to be afraid to ask for help or admit your limitations. And I think the beginning of this whole thing kind of proved that to be true. I also learned to keep everything and keep it organized. Emails, voicemails, texts, take screenshots of social media posts if you have to, but it goes way beyond keeping photographs organized. Today, my dream is still that there is purpose in having fought cancer 3 times, despite any obstacles and in spite of naysayers. I'm confident that my passion to help women who receive a cancer diagnosis will not fade.
Because of the wedding story I told you at the beginning, I raised my daughters to believe that even inopportune times may be worth documenting. It never occurred to me how that statement would come back to haunt me. In return, Tracy taught me that cancer can be fought with beauty, strength, and humor. There will be much more for one cancer patient. We will take this show or talk about it anywhere we need in order to help as many people as we can. Tracy and I would like to thank Kathleen Kearns and Caitlin Keeley for making this presentation happen. And thank you to Linda Levy and Michael Tannemura and C3 for hosting. I'd like to thank my friend Rosa for all her help during this time. And I would also like to especially thank my wife, Erin, who put up with me. It wasn't easy. I know it wasn't easy. And I really do thank her, I love her, and thank you all. And the song that you heard, that was written and performed by Tracy's husband and a friend of theirs. So, a lot of talent, a lot of talent. So any questions, I guess?
Have you done this presentation before?
No, no, this is the first time.
Bravo.
When you were talking about editing, processing the photos, was there one particular photo that you did multiple ways before you thought you got it right?
Just about all of them. As things got more important, and because of the exhibit here, and I worried a lot, and the picture with the butterflies, that I did many times, and the butterflies are in their home, and that is a piece of art that her husband did. So Jim, I wish Jim was around.
Yeah.
But he's amazing. I love him dearly. He was the best son-in-law a guy could have. Any questions, Trey?
So Tracy, can you talk about your prognosis now at this stage?
Yes. You guys can see me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't figure out how to get out of this. I'm not sure what you guys are seeing or. Okay.
Now-
Yes, if you speak up loud enough, I'll answer any questions.
They want to know about your prognosis.
Oh, so that's a tough one. I guess the honest answer is, the truthful honest answer is that once cancer has metastasized, you can never really be considered cured. So you just try to be in remission forever and find the right mixture of medication and scans often, and keep an eye on everything and just be vigilant with it. So, I still have my port, and we do blood work every month, and we do scans every couple of months, and it'll just kind of go on like that for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Kathleen just said true.
Yeah. And I learned a really valuable word from one of my oncologists, which is scanxiety, which patients and doctors go through with their patients when you're on your way to a scan, getting a scan, leaving the scan, before you get the results of the scan. You, the patient, and the doctor all experience scanxiety.
Dads too.
Yeah, family, friends, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
how did your relationships with father and daughter change and or the process of that particular?
Did you hear that, Tracy?
How did our relationship change? You want to answer that?
I get it's probably the opposite of what anybody thinks. We argue more now than ever before, because now we're not just father-daughter. Now we're business partners. So
Exactly.
everything is a debate and figuring it out. And I think both of us have learned, a lot of new things, figuring out how to do a presentation, how to have an online gallery, and how to use Facebook was like crazy. See, and and then you try Instagram, and that's even harder. So yeah, I think we're closer because we have to argue all the time and then work it out and then figure it out and then let it go. So I think that makes us closer.
Definitely. You said it. You said it right on. And it's amazing. It's on one hand, it's great to be so close to Tracy, and we've always been close, even when she was a little girl. And but now even more close. For many years, she was busy with her husband, and they were making a life. But I did go in, and now it's different. It's better. I wish it wasn't. It's a crazy feeling, because I don't want this. But then I love going there and working with her and going out shooting and using my new camera. It's,
She totally hates the new camera.
Okay.
Do you still intend to publish a book?
Oh yeah. We've gotten Kathleen's helping us, and we're out looking. Tracy found a lady through her class at the Los Angeles Center for Photography that will help with marketing and finding a publisher. And we'll see how it goes. We take each step at a time. We just found out that we're going to have a show at a gallery in Schaumburg. It's called the Trickster Gallery. I want to take the show to California, obviously, absolutely. Yeah, maybe, we'll see. We're looking for help, no question about it. I'm retired. I don't, I have a good education in this world, but any help is always appreciated. And people have been making donations and buying prints. I said, well, who would buy a print? No one's going to buy a print. Who wants it?
We did.
And we did. We sold a lot of prints. And so there's some really nice people out there, and we really appreciate it.
Let's see. Let's unmute the people. I know. I'm blanking on how to unmute everyone.
Are they?
Just tell them to unmute themselves.
Yeah.
So can you guys unmute yourself if you have any questions?
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you. I was having a brain fart.
No problem. They can also unmute themselves.
Oh, I unmute. It doesn't show up.
Still muted.
So Ruth just unmuted herself, so she had-
Oh. So Ruth, do you have any questions?
No, but this has been so beautifully presented and so encouraging and hopeful for me. My son was diagnosed with colon cancer in 2018, and the 2 weeks after that, my daughter had breast cancer that was, she had a double mastectomy, and she's left with a lot of problems. And then a couple months ago or a month ago, I've lost track of time, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I just had an operation 3 weeks ago or less. So it was very helpful as far as beautiful for me to see this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you very much, everybody. This is- Oh, please. Are you kidding?
The website on cancer patients.
Yeah, Trace, you can go to One Cancer Patient. I've got,
On social media, there's no website. I don't have a website yet, but it's at One Cancer Patient on all social media platforms.
that's the next thing we got to figure out is how to do that.
Mhm.
One step at a time, exactly. Pardon? Yeah, Ruth, we'll be thinking about you and your family, and
Thank you.
glad this helped. You know, it's good to talk about it, and you know, you can contact Tracy anytime. Is it okay if I give out your email?
Yeah. Of
I
course.
don't have a pen right here. But I know where you are, Warren, because I come to that photo critique once, and I haven't been for quite a while.
Find me on Facebook, and you can messenger me, and I'll give you her contact information.
Okay, I
Thank you.
will.
Or the One Cancer Patient is on everything.
I will find that because I'm pretty good at exploring.
Okay,
For
good.
an old lady, I'm
Good.
pretty good at it.
That's great.
I-
Please do.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Thank you. Bye-bye, hon.